listening. After our event, we will be posting on our YouTube channel. So you can find that there, and I will be sending out a post-event email with the link as well. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank John LeMay and our technology committee for putting this presentation together with M&T Bank and Eyes for Fraud. As you know, this is a very important topic, and today we're going to be talking about protecting your organization from credit card fraud. We're going to discuss the importance of and methods for protecting yourself and your organization, especially when accepting payments online. And today we have with us William De La Pena, Vice President of Merchant. Della Pena, sorry, Vice President of Merchants Services at M&T Bank, and Joel Weiss, from the head of regional sales from Eyes for Fraud. Thank you both for being here today, and please feel free to take it away.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you spending your lunch hour with us. I know it's been a while to put this in the making, and I know it is a hot topic. Actually, we had a call right before this call. The fraudsters seems to, every once in a while, they change the game up. I mean, real briefly, like 2 or 3 years ago, they were inputting gift cards into terminals to try and get money from people. Today, it was, we've actually had a number of bank customers, some of our larger customers. The fraudsters are coming in and trying to impersonate being that company, and they're setting up merchant accounts. But anyway, that's one of the few things that these fraudsters are always coming up with something new and a way to try and beat the system. Real quickly, just want to give a summary of what we're going to be doing today. The agenda, I'm going to talk about M&T Merchant Services, our capabilities. Quickly, I'm not going to talk too long about that, talk about PCI compliance and the importance of that. Then we're going to have Scruff, the PCI compliance dog, talk to you about some of the ramifications of not being PCI compliant, and it's pretty hefty fines that can be involved if you're not PCI compliant. And then I'll turn it over to Joel from Eyes for Fraud, and he'll talk about his piece. Joel, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, we can do that. Do you see me?
Yes, you're good.
Oh. Okay, so yes, I'm Joel Weiss with Eyes for Fraud. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank everyone attending. John, Bill, Stacy, Marina, Daniel, Marina. Yes, it's a pleasure being here, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
And I'm Bill De La Pena. I've been with M&T Bank for 5 years. Those that can see my camera, I've been in the industry for 30 years. When I started, it was my hair is a lot darker, a lot salt, mostly salt now. So I've been doing this a long time. I got the merchant bug and never lost it. So that's where we are. GT, here we go with the presentation. Just give you a quick overview of merchant services from M&T. M&T Merchant Services, we're unique, I think, as a bank, but also from a merchant services standpoint. We've grown organically in the South Jersey area, and I think a lot of that rapid growth has come from our approach to the marketplace. We take relationships seriously. I mean, all banks say that relationships are important, but I think we really walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to that. And we also do that from a merchant services standpoint. We don't outsource it to a third party. Most banks will outsource their processing to a third party because they don't, or to a processor because they don't want to take on the risk involved with accepting credit cards. What that means to you as a merchant is, if you're with a large ABC bank, they're outsourcing it to WorldPay or First Data. Those happen to be our backend processors. They're the 2 largest in the world. There's a contract between the bank and the processor. And in that contract, it allows the processor to increase fees over time. Typically with most larger banks, it's a 3-year contract. With us, we don't do that. It's a 1 year and we keep it in-house. We do this because we value the relationship between ourselves and our clients, and we don't want a third party to interfere with that relationship. Funds, solutions, and advanced technology. We're constantly changing terminals. The marketplace is constantly changing. With fraud, there's more and more information that's going over each transaction. Our transactions are point to point, encrypted from from when the card is inserted into the terminal or keyed into a virtual terminal, and it comes back to the processor. From a funds availability standpoint, it's next day funding. Some customers like to have their terminals or their virtual terminals set up on auto batch, so they get the funds next day. Some do it themselves manually. It's a personal preference. It's how you would want to handle that. Support, we have 24/7 customer service through our channels, both WorldPay and First Data. We're one of the few, if not only, banks that has the ability to use both of those platforms. Again, what that means to you is you're able to have access to multiple platforms, and if you have a technology you're currently using, we can probably implement through that. Enhanced features and functionality, as I said, you know, we're always ahead of the curve from the standpoint of technology. We have a number of virtual terminals we use. We just implemented one internally. It's actually M&T virtual terminal. For those of you that do have virtual terminals, you're probably familiar with what I'm about to say, but our terminal has the ability to, if you have clients that want, you want to send bills out to via email, you click the link and you're able to send the bill, so to speak, directly to your client, and they can click on the link and pay the credit card right then and there. From a reporting standpoint, we have an online portal which allows you to access, multiple reports as needed from the standpoint of how you processed and the card types and individual transactions if needed. That portal also manages chargebacks, which, if you have a chargeback, it would be right there online as opposed to waiting for it to come via the mail. This is just some of the solutions that we can offer depending on how you currently accept credit cards. If it's going to be face-to-face, e-commerce, we have the ability to pretty much interface with any gateway out there, unless it's proprietary, which there are some. There are solutions out there depending on industry where they make it industry specific. Swipe Simple is one of our virtual terminals, and the other is the one I mentioned earlier. For those of you that do e-check or want ACH payments, we're able to do that as well. We also have the ability to do gift cards. Gift cards are they're a good application if you have if you're trying to build brand, and if you have customers that come in, they return something. I've always suggested to my customers, if they want, instead of giving back cash, give back a gift card. This encourages repeat business and less money out of the business itself. Wanted to, I'm going to skip this one because we already talked about it. I want to talk about PCI compliance and why it's important and why it's actually come to be. It started back in 2004 when the number of the big boxes had breaches. I think Target might have been the first one where millions of credit cards were stolen. That's when it was implemented. The objective of PCI compliance is basically to ensure safe transaction through the process and mitigate fraud as much as possible. And how they've done that, they come up with DSS, which is the data security standard, which allows there's like 300 pages of different criteria that is used by PCI to, depending on how you currently accept cards and how many transactions you take a year, that warrants the questionnaire that you would have to take. Typically, for most of the merchants that we do business with, it's an annual questionnaire. Once you get through the hardship of the first one, they save those answers for the following year, and they do a scan of your system. There are a number of merchants out there that I get these calls every day. Why do I have to be PCI compliant? What is PCI? Who is this Security Matrix? Security Matrix is the company we use that does the PCI compliance for us. It just is mind-boggling to me that you have customers out there that don't even know what it is. I mean, it's been around for almost 20 years now, and I think that's the one thing that I wanted to push home today was how important PCI compliance is and how it can affect your business if you were to have a breach. And with that being said, I'm going to play that quick video, and then we'll turn it over to Joel so he can talk about his piece.
Did you know that if you accept credit cards with your business, that you need to be PCI compliant? Why do you say? Well, if you should get breached and some of the credit card information gets stolen, you could be subject to significant penalties. For example, a forensic investigation of your point of sale system can cost you between $10,000 and $20,000. Reimbursement for purchases made using stolen credit cards. The replacement for stolen credit cards, $20 to $30 per card. Just 1,000 cards would add up to $20,000 to $30,000. Fines for non-compliance with PCI standard are up to $500,000 with Visa and up to $200,000 with MasterCard. So as you can see, running your business without being PCI compliant is like driving a car without insurance. For the price of a cup of coffee per day, a managed security services provider can help keep you compliant. So a cup of coffee for $1.5 million. So this is your cybersecurity second. See you next.
Okay. I picked that guy because he kind of stands out. Hopefully, you remember him going down the road. But it really, I mean, all kidding aside, it is an important topic. And I've seen many nightmare videos of small to medium-sized restaurants and businesses that have gone out of business because they picked the wrong point of sale provider, or usually that's what it is, and then they have a breach, and then they're in the situation where they owe tons and tons of money. Joel, if you want to take over, I stop sharing so you can take over the
Sure.
take over the screen there.
Hello, everyone, again.
What's that?
Oh, I said hello, everyone, again. This is Joel with IFA Fraud. I just want to make sure I can be heard. Yes, okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Is my screen? Excellent.
It is.
So Bill laid it out very, very nicely and impressively about taking credit cards in store in a retail environment. So retail environment is basically when you come into a store, you have a card with a chip and everything. Bill spoke about PCI. What we're going to talk today about is about taking credit cards online where there is no card present. There is a online transaction, which we all know, e-commerce. Today's day and age, obviously, probably after COVID, when COVID hit, a lot of businesses went online and they became very big online. And with the good come the challenges. So you do a lot of business online, then you get some challenges by doing that. And one of the challenges is fraud. So we're going to talk about in depth everything. So we're gonna tackle it from just to give you an idea what to look for, how to go about it, what you can do from your side, and so on and so forth. So the numbers are in, and the number of it's a very high number. 96% of businesses will experience some kind of fraud attempt to their website. And the question is always, you running a website or you're running a other kind of either an organization or a retail store, and you don't have a card present and you're taking a credit card, are you at risk too? Now, just to give you a little background, what is a fraud transaction? Fraud transaction. So there's two kinds of fraud. How we put it is there's two kinds of fraudsters. One kind of fraud is a sloppy fraudster, we call him. He is like in a basement and he'll just steal a credit card, try to do a transaction. Doesn't have to be that he's, you can sometimes identify those kind of transactions being shipped to a warehouse, being shipped to a big apartment building. Billing and shipping doesn't match, AVS doesn't match. This is something more easily identifiable. Then there is, to all of our surprises, we all have offices and we try to make earn a living on the right way. Some people are sitting in an office and they are actually trying to do fraud in an office environment, meaning they have people trying to figure out how can we screw the system. And they'll just try to do it, and they make it very, very nice and neat. And they'll do billing and shipping match, AVS match, and they always try to outsmart someone who is selling online, an e-commerce seller. Now, TransUnion has a number that is in 2021, which is a very high number, which is 46% year over year, which this digital transactions, doubled or had 46% that increased in year over year, which is a very high number, which again means that everyone who is selling online will have a fraud attempt and either fraud transactions or fraud attempts. I always tell the story when people ask me, who do you deal with? I give them an example. I'll go into examples soon, but I just want to give you an example. When someone asks us, who is your customer when it comes to fraud? I give them an example. We have someone selling medical books online. They have fraud. And obviously we'll have the luxury items have fraud, that's a given. But we'll have someone who sells medical books. Who would think that someone would steal medical books? But that's just the fact of life. In the next 50 minutes, or we'll try to keep it shorter, maybe, we'll try to reach into what is fraud, what type of business is the most risk of fraud, and how do people handle fraud, and what should you be looking for when it comes to fraud. Now, the question is, what is fraud? Professional fraudsters is basically someone who they steal credit cards and they just have they take a credit card and they order something, they ship it to either their own address or they ship it to a warehouse, big apartment building where they can just pick it up, UPS drops it off and they pick it up. But the bottom line is that the business is the one who is going to be at risk, and the business is the one who is going to lose out and lose out twice, because they'll ship the package and then they'll get a chargeback for fraud, which is basically going to put them out of the money twice, the product plus the money. Now, what type of businesses are usually the one at risk of fraud? So, as I said earlier, you can say everyone is at risk, but who is most at risk? We would probably put it at the jewelry, electronics of the world, luxury items, beauty products. We see a lot of beauty products that have a lot of fraud. Now, those categories has a few reasons why. First of all, it's a very easy resellable item. So if the fraudster wants to buy something for $1,000 and they'll just resell it for $500, he just made $500. It's resellable easily. And also, if they cannot afford it, it's a luxury item, they want it, they'll just take a credit card and steal it. So those businesses. Then someone who sells internationally, which gives them opportunity, to sell to the whole world, but then it becomes a little bit more riskier. You don't know where it's being shipped, and it takes more to identify a fraud. Then we see that the newly launched businesses. So you get an e-commerce, someone who builds a website, and he is very excited, and we see this a lot. He's very excited, and he gets business. It starts coming in orders. When orders come in, they get very excited. They start shipping. Fraudsters have a feel for these kind of businesses, either by, the business starts doing SEO, so they start marketing online, and when you get people to come to your website, you get the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the newly launched websites are a very big target to fraudsters. Now, how do you deal with fraud when you have your online e-commerce, or how do you deal with it? So there's a few kinds of businesses, how we summarize it, and we'll go into each and every one, how people deal with it. So there's the risk taker in business, which says, I do a lot of business online. What is fraud going to cost me? It's going to cost me a fraction. I'm just going to live with it. I'm going to sell to everyone, not going to do any restrictions on my site, and I'll eat the few frauds that get in. It's okay. Obviously, that would increase the sales, but he'll get a lot of losses, and he does not know the limit, because fraud has no limit, what he will be hit with. Usually the businesses that sell low ticket items, you know, $20, $40, $50 ticket items, and they sell a lot, will have that approach. Again, it's a risky approach, but that's, some people do that. Some people would be overly cautious, which, when you're overly cautious, yes, you're going to have less fraud, but you're going to lose a lot of good orders. For example, if you put restrictions on your payment gateway, you don't ship to bill and ship doesn't match, you don't ship there, you're losing the sale. And it does not mean it's not a good sale. If I'm buying something and I want to send someone, so I want to have a different shipping, or I travel somewhere and I want to have a different shipping, that's still a good sale. So we see businesses that sell very high luxury items. For example, somebody who sells watches, so they have a $20,000 average ticket. Those people would be very cautious, because if they lose the $20,000, they lost $20,000. They'll be more cautious than the one who have lower ticket items. Then you have the manual review, which means you have a company, and every order that comes in, you check it and you recheck it. If it has anything that rings a red flag, you'll just go to the bottom of it. This gives you a good opportunity, you know, to do good sales and to take away the bad orders, but it's still a very time consuming and becomes very costly, because the person doing it is actually someone who is on payroll, or, you know, they can do something better with their time, and it's a very time consuming thing. Businesses who have, you know, very low volume in sales, they have enough time, enough staff to do it, they will probably go to that option of reviewing every order manually. Then there is the other option, which is get a provider. A provider is, IFA Fraud is a provider in that space. There's many more. And when you take a provider, the provider usually checks every order for you. It's being done in a automatic system. It's integrated into your shopping cart, and you should be worry-free of any order coming through as fraud, because either the provider would stop it. If not, usually it's insured and you get your money back. So there's no fear for you selling online. Obviously, there's a cost to it. So that's up to the person, you know, signing up to see if it's something that's worth for them to go to a provider. So that's the basic four options how people deal with online fraud. As we said, risk taker, overly cautious, then there's the manual reviews, and then there is the provider, if you go to someone out and you outsource it. And selling online is actually a very good thing. I mean, I don't know how many, I mean, this is a diverse crowd. So we have probably people who are doing retail stores, online, organizations. So selling online is definitely a good thing. You reach out to the whole world. You're not limited to a brick and mortar store. Even if you have your brick and mortar store, you can still, you know, have a website. Today's day and age, it's very easy to get a website and to sell. You can sell to the world. And you just have to be aware that fraud is there. Fraud is something that you should look out for, and you should not get hit with a fraud chargeback as much as you can. We'll try to summarize it with 5 red flags of fraud, what you should look for. One of the things is what fraudsters would do is, obviously, they steal a credit card, so they cannot ship it to the actual credit card holder, because that's obviously a stolen credit card. So they'll need to find the address where to ship it. They don't want to ship it to their house, because just in case there's an investigation, they don't want to be involved. So they try to ship it to a forwarder. Forwarder is someone who would take the item. It's usually meant for people who are either moving, or either people want to send something out of the country, go to a forwarder, they ship it further. So you would have the UPS deliver it to a forwarder, and the fraudster would pick it up from there or ship it further from there. So that's a red flag. When you get an order, billing and shipping is different, and the address is actually a forwarder. Then there is a new domain. So one of the things when someone comes on your website, they'll have to input information, their email, their phone number, their name, address. When they put an email, I put up an example here. So what they do is they take a website like, let's say Amazon. I mean, it could be with anyone. We just try to have one of the popular one out there. So if they take, let's say Jay Weiss at Amazon.com, and when I get an order of someone ordering from Jay Weiss at Amazon.com, I would say, okay, this is someone who works at Amazon. He's a legitimate guy, and I'll ship it. It's okay. If he ships it to somewhere else, that's okay. What they do is they build a domain Amazon.co. So what happens is you have JWeiss at Amazon.co. When I see the order, I have tons of orders coming in. I just see Amazon.co. Okay, this is an Amazon guy. I ship it. That's not an Amazon guy. That's a switch and bait which basically is a fraudster. The other thing that we flagged for as when someone is using a VoIP phone, and today's day is if you have a prepaid phone. Prepaid phone is very popular today, and by fraudsters is definitely very popular. So what they do is they take a prepaid phone like this. They have a phone number where they can be reached, because companies would call and verify an order. So if they have a rented phone or they have a prepaid phone, they'll be reached. It's a real phone, but we all know that this is either a VoIP or a prepaid phone, which is a red flag. Then they can do the same thing with the IP address. IP address is something that would also identify a person, where they are at and where they're ordering from. Today, there is VPN or proxies, which VPN stands for virtual private network. You can block your IP address that no one should be able to see it. And when you're using that, that is also a red flag. With all those red flags, I want to make sure that you understand, it does not mean that these orders are fraud. It's a red flag to look at and to make sure you know what you're doing when you send the order. Then you have foreign customers with US cards. If you have a foreign customer ordering something out of the country and they're using a US credit card, which is a red flag. Does not mean it's fraud, it's a red flag. All those things are things to look at when you, especially if you're a smaller company and you don't want to get hit with fraud, you don't want to take an outside company to do it, you want to be cautious. So just be on the lookout on these things. So just to summarize again what we spoke about, what is fraud? We all know fraud is going on in online businesses. Which type of businesses are most at risk? Spoke about it. The luxury items are most at risk. International orders, newly launched e-commerce. How people handle it. You have the cautious guy, you have the risk taker, you have the manual reviews, and the provider, which is outside companies. And then you have the red flags, or just spoke, is the always look out for the red flags. There's many more, and obviously we're limited in time. Any questions? I hope this was
one other flag that I would add that I've experienced through the years is a homeowner that's ordering if it's a large ticket item. Keep in mind, especially if it's an American Express card holder, the American Express tends to lean towards the card holder more than anyone else. And another one that I've come across many times is folks that are looking to get something real quick. That's a big red flag, especially if it's a large ticket item. See it in the B2B world and also in the service industry as well.
That is correct, Bill. And yes, and there's definitely the one-day shipping is definitely a red flag. There is many more. As I said, we couldn't put everything on. This was just the top 5. But I appreciate the time. And if you have any questions, I'm ready to make
thank you, Joel. Appreciate the presentation. I know we did get a list of questions from everyone previous to the call. The one that sticks out in my mind was someone had asked about card acceptance when they don't have the ability to, phone or internet. That's the toughest one. I mean, in a way, you're taking a risk. The best way would be to get an imprint of the card to at least prove that you have the card in hand. But in those scenarios, I think you're best to try and at least have your credit card provider have the ability to call to get an approval number. Are there any other questions that we have from the group?
I can tell you that as a webmaster, I have multiple service businesses that I maintain websites for, and it's a red flag as soon as we get a message that describes some kind of a service that someone would like to procure right away is one of them. They want it very quickly, and almost always the last sentence of that email is, "And do you accept credit cards?" Then it's a spammy fraud thing. For some reason, they're always structured the same way. And it just ends with, "Do you accept credit cards?" Another thing that I wanted to mention was those proxy services that hide IP addresses are also being used by website hosting companies to protect their services, their servers, and the websites that they host from things like hackers and fraud. They use a service called Cloudflare. I know that my website host is WP Engine, is a company that I think is really reputable and I've had really good experience with over the last 8 years. And they use Cloudflare now for their upgraded server systems in order to protect by hiding their IP address. So it's not always necessarily a shady thing. It's actually a really good way to protect yourself.
That is correct. I just want to add to that. So basically, that's what I said, that all these things are red flags being used by fraudsters. Now, obviously, they are in business. A VPN is in business, or proxies, for good reason. It was not built by fraudsters. It was built for good reason. The fraudsters always find a way to take advantage of those things and use it for their interest. It's a red flag. It does not mean that the order is fraud. We see a lot of people traveling using VPNs, and we deal with RV companies. RV companies are sending to campsites or mobile home sites. So there's a lot of orders that have billing and shipping mismatches and going to a different address and to a campsite. You would think that might be fraud because it's a campsite, but no, they're using a VPN and sending it legitimately to a campsite, which is perfectly fine. Just have to be aware.
Yeah, like Lisa said, whenever there's a rush, you have to do more due diligence to make sure that it's legit.
That is correct.
I had a B2B purchase, and it was a custom order, and the guy had a bad feeling, but he did it anyway. And then he got mad at the bank. And when he really knew deep down, he probably shouldn't have taken that order, and it was custom, and the guy backed out.
Yep.
Does anyone have any additional questions? Rob.
Yes. So I run a service business. I have men out in the field that take credit cards all day long. We use Square and Clover swipes. Every once in a while they stop working and we have to call in the number and punch it in by hand here at the office. What kind of risk do we take by doing that?
It's a little bit higher risk because you're not inserting the card. I mean, the EMV that came out, I don't know how many years ago that was a huge help from the standpoint of fraud, because the fraudsters weren't able to duplicate the mag strips. I mean, they could duplicate the mag strips previous to that. With EMV and you're inserting the card, it takes a huge portion of the fraud away. So if you're not able to get connectivity for whatever reason, you have to take that card and key the transaction in. It's usually a higher cost for you to accept that card, and there is additional risk involved. But I mean, in your case, it is a face-to-face environment, but you are keying it in. So Visa, MasterCard, whatever the card brand is, it sees it, looks at that as a transaction you took over the phone, so it's a higher risk type of transaction, unfortunately.
All right, thanks.
Have you had any situations where you've had chargebacks with Square, or is it Square you used today?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
How do they handle that?
Poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, generally it's a one challenge, and then it's up to you guys.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we have an online portal that manages that. The key with chargebacks is being able to get that information as quickly as possible and responding. But if it's a fraud situation, it's, you know, it makes it 10 times harder, and that's why Joel's here today. I'm a big proponent of what Joel has to offer. It's basically chargeback protection. I have a long-term customer of mine. He sells HVAC equipment out of his home across the country, and they've been using these guys for a couple of years now and have no issues. They get that approval that, you know, they're going to be guaranteed for fraud, and it's a done deal. Whereas in the regular world, you know, you do a transaction through us, you do the due diligence that we spoke of, the PCI compliance piece, all those fines, that PCI, that the fines there is just for PCI. The other is chargebacks. I mean, if you have a chargeback without Joel's service and it's fraud, a lot of times there's not much we can do about it. But that's why the due diligence and just having being aware and of things that you should do and the red flags that we spoke of is so important.
Correct. And again, that's the service that a company like IFA Fraud would provide, is to make for a company easier to sell online, easier to take a credit card without the card present, because, you know, as Bill said, when you enter the card with a chip, then you're most likely guaranteed from the bank against chargebacks. When you don't have the card or you key it in, then when the issues start, you get a chargeback. The first response from the bank is there was no card present, so we're not liable for it. What we do is we actually verify the transaction. We make sure that the credit card being used in that transaction is a good card, good person, being shipped to the right place. And when you have all those things, we would then give you our guarantee that in case you get a chargeback, you don't have to worry. We'll write you a check, we'll cover the chargeback, and we'll take care of it. So you never lose money when we guarantee it, because we stand behind what we do. And again, the presentation was more of for individuals that run online business or run anything that you know, that the card is not present, what to look for. And as others mentioned, yes, the one-day shipping, or, you know, big items and those kind of things.
And Ralph, the other thing that I would suggest, you know, those situations where you don't have coverage, or anyone that's taking a transaction and they have to key it in, if you're able to get an imprint of the card, that proves that you have the card in hand. But if you're able to train your staff, the first thing that comes up when it comes to a chargeback, they ask, do you have the card holder's signature? Does the card holder's signature on the back of the card match up on the invoice? So a best practice I would suggest to everyone is to have that in place, that the customer signs the invoice with whatever legalities you have on your invoice in regards to returns and things of that nature, and that, you know, you train your staff to look at the back of the credit card to make sure that those signatures match up, because that's the first thing they look at when it comes to chargebacks. Other than fraud, if it's fraud, then, you know, unfortunately sometimes you're dead in the water. A lot of folks don't realize or understand that.
You know, when people are signing tablets, they generally, like, I don't sign like I normally would sign a check. If I'm signing a tablet, I'm just going to put a scribble down on there and be done with it, and it's always accepted. So if that's the case, it's certainly not going to match my signature on the back of the card.
True. I mean, if you're doing a lot of tablets and it's doing signature capture, I would again, I think it's a training thing, because if you have a fraudster, I'll never forget this deal I wrote years ago, but I went to see this guy and he went like this and a straight line across.
Yeah.
Like you said, Ralph, I mean, that's what you do sometimes when you're doing it on tablet. But if you train your staff to preempt and say, you know, can you try and make your signature the same as that's on the back of the card, then they'll be a little bit more cognizant of you know, of that and try and do it correctly.
Okay.
Any additional questions? No? Phil?
And I was trying to think of one, but Bill just answered two of my questions after Ralph's. Because we actually 100%, I'd say 100% of the credit cards we take on the service industry are, not in person.
Right.
And and we have them sign a form, but it's, we don't ever see their credit card. We just get their credit card number. And
Right.
then we have a process that we destroy everything. So, but the question is, we've always done that to make sure we have no trail. We have nothing in our files on just on the outside chance that anybody were to break into our office or anything. We have all the receipts from the bank that we process the credit card. But I guess, based upon what you just said, should I ask for people for a picture of their credit card?
What industry you in?
I do environmental consulting. So basically people are signing a contract with me. They could be anywhere in America. And so we have a form that they sign, which is a credit card authorization form. And they put all their credit card information on that and sign it.
Okay. A virtual terminal might be a better option there as opposed to it's more of what you're doing now is more of a manual process. It's good to have that. Because you have that as a backup, again, from the standpoint of the chargeback. Is it usually ongoing or is it just a one-time thing?
Both. Sometimes it's just a one-time thing. Other times, the client authorizes, and there's also a box where they check for that says every invoice that's produced, just charge my credit card. And then we send them a receipt. We send them a receipt of the chargeback, of the charge card.
Of the charge.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but it's interesting, we have an ability now because we just changed our CRM to where I can send them the link to pay the credit card themselves, and they input all the information. And the first, I think it was the first 5 we tried that with, they're all like, we don't want to bother. Could we just call you with the information?
They want to do old school.
They want,
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Bill, though,
Yeah, every business is different.
Bill, in a situation like that, where you have a CRM that you're inputting information into and stuff like that, can you pretty much, think that it's going to be secure
Yeah, it sounds like that has some type of virtual terminal attached to it. Most virtual terminals have the ability to send a link to make a payment now.
Okay.
As we have a proprietary one for M&T that does the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's how we take payments through the chamber. And I was just making sure we were doing what we need to do.
Yeah, I've come across I'll never forget, years ago, it was a wholesaler and she had a filing cabinet full of credit cards. And I'm like, what are you doing? But, and that was within the last 10 years.
Yeah, that was our previous experience as well at the chamber, but we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, if you go to PCI compliance and you answer that question, that's probably one of the questions that comes up, and
Yes.
it's time to change the way that you do things and store that information in a secure spot online.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Okay, well, this was super informative. And again, such an important topic for our members to hear. We will be putting this recording on our YouTube channel. I'll be sending out a follow-up email to everybody who registered and didn't attend as well. I welcome all of you to join us on August 11th as we discuss diagnosing unrecognized pain and what you think is the most motivating emotion to buy. And it's a deep dive into diagnosing pain, some of which the prospect might not even know they have. So it's kind of a sales-based strategies for success. And then again, thank you to our technology committee for putting this all together for us. And of course, for your time, we appreciate it. If you have additional questions for Bill or Joel, please let me know and I will get that to them. And again, thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.